So I don't know if this is a chicken and egg scenario, whether it's because the PlayStation fans were not buying the games that pushed Sony to continue to money hap more and then move those games to PC, or whether Sony was moving those games to PC first and then the player base didn't bother to buy the exclusives anymore. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. There's just a lot that we need to pay attention to and talk about. Saw a comment this morning, and I think I kind of heard it, but I was trying to kind of keep away from the WuKong news. I just want to maybe take some time to play the game if I have any time. And apparently the game has sold about 18 million copies. Now, there are many factors and many reasons here. The game is coming from a region that has basically one of the biggest player bases in the world. That's one of the reasons a lot of Western publishers have been trying to enter into a lot of the Asian market and the Chinese market. And WuKong is not just, China only. It's actually based on a huge cultural lore that resonates within different parts of Asia. So its sales are not surprising to anyone who actually knows about the character and the story and the lore. In fact, Bloomberg has an article talking about the investor who risked it to help invest in the game. And even here on Gematsu, they have the sales of 18 million copies. What's funny, though, is a PlayStation fan tried to celebrate it as a dunk by saying the game is not available on Xbox. Do you know what's funny about that is I've always been saying for months to deaf ears and fallen deaf ears that the biggest challenge PlayStation has in its single player games is that its own partners are actually direct competitors to its own games. When Black Myth Wukong came out, there was the conversation, is it a Souls-like or is it more like God of War? It's more like God of War in its presentation. Having played the Souls-like or, whatever, you can tell the difference. God of War was able to sell about 15 million units as of November 2023. Basically, the amount of sales was quite interesting. So seeing it at 15 million units and then possibly by now, maybe we're going to get a few more in terms of sales. When the game comes to PC, possibly PC is going to be able to help it push into the 20 million units, just like its predecessor. So that should not be surprising. However, the amount of time it took for this game to hit 15 million units compared to the amount of time it took for this game to hit 18 million units is night and day. This game is going to, in my opinion, more than likely sell more than God of War Ragnarok. It's just the way the math comes out to be. And in order for it to be able to sell more, in order for it to be in a position that it is, and in order for maybe God of War Ragnarok to catch up with it, God of War Ragnarok has to make its way to PC. Why? Because its audience is not buying these games. For God of War 2014 to actually make it into the second highest PlayStation selling game as a PS4 game that had over 100 million units around this time, 2018, maybe not 100, maybe let's just say about 80%, it actually has to have a PC port to be able to push into those numbers because it did sell well on PC, which was actually very interesting, right? And so Black Myth Wukong already coming out on PC had the advantage, number one. And number two, did also snuff out the conversation with Concord. So not only did the single player game that so-called PlayStation fans are celebrating cost PlayStation in terms of their $200 or so million, maybe $100 million live service game, it's also beating in terms of sales and its progression their own single player games because a lot of the PlayStation fans don't buy the games as much as they would make it seem to be. They're not necessarily putting money down. So when I tell people on the channel and say, PlayStation needs to go day one on PC because that's just exactly their play that they have right now, they get upset. They say, no, they don't need PC when obviously they do. Because if they were satisfied with the sales on the PlayStation console, they'd continue to stay as exclusive as possible to fulfill their so-called major, business proposition or their business strategy, which is to keep as many games on PlayStation. What's even crazy and what's even interesting is PlayStation is money-hatting this game at the same time while it's beating their own single-player game. They're investing in a game that is supposed to maybe block the Xbox version while the game is still at the same time smoking their own single player games. It's such an Ouroboros in a weird sense. It's like it's eating itself from within. It's so wild. I think at the end of the day, when you kind of see it from a logical perspective, it really just goes like, what? Like, what are they doing? Why do they think this business strategy makes sense in 2024? Because guess who's still going to come to Xbox and still make a few million sales and copies? It's going to be WuKong. As much as a lot of these folk cry and claim that Xbox players don't buy games, you're the exact reason PlayStation is taking its games to PC. Someone in my comment section said something to me. They said, why should they care if PlayStation is taking its games to a whole different platform and using time and resources to do that? Sarjigri Pokeri, he's been a long-time audience member, and he likes to put forward these points. And sometimes I have to say, you might want to slow down and consider exactly why these are actually points that are costing PlayStation the time and resources. He said, how does time and resources go into a system I don't own good for me? Well, in this case, they've already given you the game, but it's not about you anymore from the PlayStation side. They need more money, so they have to spend time and resources taking those games to other platforms. Seeing as your own player base, that's all the folk on PlayStation, have not bought enough copies to justify them leaving it on the platform while their competitors are outselling them. Horizon Zero Dawn with a PC and a PS4 port is still at 24 million, and that's been over multiple years. When Hogwarts Legacy did 25 with ease, Elden Ring did 25 with ease. So From Software, that's just a simple developer publisher, and Avalanche Software under Warner Brothers of all people, has made games almost back to back that has destroyed every sales metrics that PlayStation has been able to put together from this leak. This is exactly what I've been telling y'all, that their own partners have been competing with them and are taking them to lunch. A studio like Black Myth Wukong, like Game Science, puts out a game and is already basically on the edge of knocking Uncharted off the list of PlayStation's games in terms of comparison. That's got to be concerning. So if you think that money hatting Black Myth Wukong was the win, it's not the flex you think it is if you actually think about it. So at the end of the day, what needs to happen is, in order for PlayStation to stay competitive, they have to get another platform. And seeing as they're just super anti-competitive with Xbox, they're going to need PC in their back pocket. If they're not coming day one, whether they're coming 2 years later, it doesn't matter. It's born out of a need for these expensive IPs. The alternative is that they continue to invest in smaller IPs that keep giving them wins, where they can actually scale back on production cost and maximize profit. Without that strategy, they continue to push themselves closer and closer to PC on day one. They're not exempt from the forces of the market. And at the same time, guess who's coming again to even add more to their competitive plate? Xbox. By bringing their games to PlayStation, they still continue to create competitive stress on the PlayStation games. Blade's going to come out and it's going to show up on, PlayStation. It's going to create competitive stress for Wolverine. Believe you me, Marvel fans are Marvel fans. Sure, they'll look at both of them and have to sit there and choose. Some might choose Wolverine, some might choose Blade. I know some of you are into art style and, but the art style is this and the art style is that. But you can't necessarily, predict what fandom is going to fandom. And I think this is exactly what Xbox is basically gunning at. We'll talk about that in a different video, seeing that Xbox was basically on the money, understanding these concepts and looking how, a lot of these franchises might be nice for you to basically put money on them. But at the end of the day, why put your money and advance somebody else's franchise when you can basically advance your own house? And advance their house, they're doing. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate you guys so much. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Peace out.